All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SIG Scheduling Weekly. As you know, this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to public internet. So we have quite a few items on the agenda today. Hopefully, we will get to all of them. I'm going to start by giving you some update about some of the projects that we're working on. As you know, we're working on adding scheduling framework. Some of the PRs are already managed. There is a PR for adding configuration of the framework, which is basically adding some configuration to the scheduler to define what plugins we want to enable and what are the set of arguments that we want to pass to these plugins. This is an important PR for the scheduler or for the scheduling framework because it touches the scheduler API, and also it's the main way to configure all the plugins and the framework. So we are hoping that we can merge this soon. One round of API review by the API reviewers is already done. Jordan Leggett has helped us a lot on this. I really appreciate his efforts. There are a couple of extension points, a couple additional extension points, I should say, that are already merged. They are QSort and Permit. Thank you for the contributors for these. And then there is a postbind, which is also ready. The postbind PR is ready to merge, but I decided to hold it because every time we add a new one, the PR for adding configuration of the framework needs to be basically rebased. And in order to avoid numerous rebases, I decided to hold this a little bit until that one is merged. But hopefully we will have that merged soon, and then we can have the postbind as well. There is a little hiccup with another important feature that we wanted to deliver in 1.15, and that's event pod spreading that Huang Wei was working on. There is a limited API review bandwidth in the Kubernetes community. I actually have raised this issue with the SIG Arch and also contributor experience. We're trying to brainstorm with those folks to see if we can find any solution for this. Unfortunately, there is a high risk that this feature will not make it to the code freeze because there are not enough reviewers for the API side of this. I really appreciate Wei's work on this, and we really hope that we can get this in 1.15, but if it doesn't happen, we will definitely have this in 1.16. This is something that we should keep in mind, that whenever we work on a feature that requires API review, we should probably send the PRs right at the beginning of a cycle. Basically, as soon as a code freeze for one version is lifted, we should probably have these PRs ready for review. Otherwise, there is a chance that these may not make it. This is a little unfortunate. We're trying to resolve this issue with the community and somehow raise the number of API reviewers, but at this point, we don't have a solution yet. There is another PR for supporting less than and greater than operators for interpod affinity. That one is also pending API review and also code review. Hopefully we will have that too, but that's also in risk. There was this other problem in the scheduler that one of our preemption tests was sometimes flaky. This was going on for a long time, and we kind of ignored it because we felt like it's not that important. But of course, it was causing some trouble for some of you folks, especially when it was failing in pre-submit and all, and sometimes in the CI tests. Wei has found the root cause for this, which is actually kind of subtle. Thanks to Wei for his efforts on finding what was happening. We are still working on the actual fix for this. He sent a PR today. I'm reviewing that PR. It's a small PR, but we are trying to find maybe a slightly cleaner solution, because right now it just adds a condition to the existing logic that feels a little bit like a hack to me. I am trying to find maybe a little cleaner. Yeah, Wei, if you have further updates, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I felt the same. So yeah, we should come up with a better solution on that. I just raised it as a kind of draft so we can brainstorm on a better solutions. Yeah,
Yeah.
but the rationale and the why I propose that PR is based on the real symptoms I observed on the reproducing steps. Yeah, so we should follow the real execution path, which is that a kind of dummy node, sorry, a dummy pod update was sent right after we reserve that information for that preemptors. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally understand what the problem is, and it makes sense. But we just need to find out if we can make it a little cleaner. It's fine to go back and change some of the logic to remove the possibility of this arrays. But give all of us a little bit time to think a little bit more about this. We have one more item on the agenda, but if you have any questions so far, please go ahead and ask those questions, and then we can go with the another item, which is in-place vertical auto-scaling for pods. Okay, I assume there is no question, but feel free to ask questions whenever you want. One other quick thing that I would like to add is that next week is KubeCon. I'm going to be there. We're not going to have any SIG meetings next week, and we're not going to have any SIG meetings in the week afterwards. So basically, this is our last SIG meeting in the next 2 or 3 weeks, however you want to count it. Basically, we're not going to have any more meetings in the next 2 weeks. So I will see some of you folks at KubeCon, and if you're not attending KubeCon, I will see you in the next SIG meeting, which is going to happen in 3 weeks from now. So Vinay, you're here. Please go ahead and tell us about in-place vertical pod auto-scaling.
Hi, Bobby. Yeah, thank you. So I think the main agenda that I have is to communicate. We last looked at this in March, and it has evolved a bit since then. The main I just wanted to itemize the main changes that were there and run them by this by the SIG, and then see if there was any concerns. So last we looked at it, we had resources. We were making the resource requirements in the pod spec container as the desired resources. That still stands, and the container status had resources allocated, which would communicate to the observer, the external agent like VPA or any other component, what the currently held resources are. And we went back and forth with the SIG node on this, and they were there was a case where we were persisting state in one of the pod conditions, and they did not want state to be persisted across and relied upon by any of the components. So the change that the key change that we made was to introduce another component, another resource, another component in the pod spec under containers called resource binding, similar to how node name is scheduler sets the node name. Scheduler would set the resource binding. This keeps the scheduler in the loop. As per our previous, there was a problem with the original version where if the scheduler and the kubelet act on it in parallel, then we would end up in a potential race condition where the kubelet might accept the update, and then the scheduler at the same time is working on scheduling another pod but hasn't seen this update and schedules a pod to the same node, which gets rejected. To address that problem, I made an update to the workflow to have the scheduler first look at the resource update request, agree that it is valid, its node cache, look at its node cache and say, okay, I see that the node can handle this, and accept that. And when it does that, it takes the resource requirements, which is now stands for desired resources, and puts that into the resource binding section. The current proposal is to do this by extending the bind endpoint. Today, we use bind endpoint to assign a pod to a node. This would be an extension to that, saying, okay, we bind the pod to a node. We also use it to update the resources. Along with the bind, we set the resources. And when resource updates are desired, scheduler looks at it and says, okay, I agree with this, and then it would call the update. And then the kubelet has to only look at the resource binding and then act on it. It runs through its own gating checks, where for the case where multiple schedulers are concerned, there's another race condition, so it does another pod with resources predicate check. And then if all goes well in the happy golden path case, the kubelet would take that and do the update container resources API on the containers. And then once that is done, it would update the resources allocated. So that is the key change. In terms of the flow, nothing has changed in terms of how the scheduler, where the scheduler fits in. It hasn't changed since March, except that this new field has come in. And the pod conditions that we had, one pod condition there, we split them up into two different pod conditions. One is called resources bound, and the other one is resize success, pod resize success. And scheduler sets the pod resources bound condition to indicate to the components whether it agrees or not. And the resize success is set by kubelet and then maybe cleared by a controller to indicate to the scheduler, okay, we're retrying this. So I don't know if I missed any points or if I've not been clear, but that's kind of the short summary of the changes that have occurred since March. So the idea is to essentially communicate this and see, have SIG scheduling think over this change and see if there are any concerns with this change, potentially review the latest changes in the CAP at some point.
Yeah, I will definitely be happy to review the CAP. The changes that you described make sense. I reviewed your PR a while ago. It was a few months ago. I don't remember all the details now, but what I remember is exactly similar to what you said. We basically look at the desired, by we I mean the scheduler looks at the desired resources and verifies those, basically approves that, and then those are sent to the kubelet. So, but one thing that is not so clear to me is the reason that a race condition exists. So basically I wonder where the race condition is that forces us to use the binding sub-resource for changing resources of pods.
The race condition from what we looked is, let's say, let's take the case where there is one node which has 4 gig of memory, and it's been assigned one single pod which has asked for 3 gig. The scheduler sees that and it assigns that, okay, now that pod is up and running on that node. And then there is another pod in the queue which asks for 1 gig. So now this pod can fit on that one node. There is 1 gig of capacity on that node where this previously assigned 3 gig pod is running. So scheduler sees that, and scheduler is going to assign that pod to this node against that capacity. While the scheduler is running through its predicate, let's say we get a patch for that first pod, which is asking for 3 gig. Now it says, I want 3.5. And the kubelet at that point hasn't seen the pod that the scheduler is about to assign to that node. So the kubelet says, okay, yeah, I have 4 gig and I only have one pod that's using 3 gig. Sure, I can do 3.5 for you. And it accepts that. Now the schedule...
Sorry, I thought in the original proposal, I thought all these requests for changing amount of resources had to be approved by the scheduler. So kubelet couldn't accept it directly.
Not in the first one, the one that Carol and Beata, they raised in December, that did not have it. After I changed it, scheduler came into picture.
Yeah. The one that I'm talking about the one that you basically, the one before this very recent change, the version that you worked on, that one had the scheduler in the loop, right? So the kubelet couldn't approve a resource change directly. It had to go through the scheduler. And if the scheduler is approving, then where is the race condition?
There is no race condition in that case.
Okay.
The only changes that have happened since March, that's what you looked at in March, and then that continues to remain the same. The changes are more around where the information is stored, how it is stored. Previously, we were storing it. We had the resource requirements, which is the desired resources, and in the pod status, container status, we had resources allocated, which is the Kubernetes view. And we introduced a third struct, which is pod resource binding, to which the scheduler says, okay, I approve. Previously, what we were doing was we would set the pod condition, which is a part of the status field, and the reliance on setting that and persisting that was against the API conventions. The API conventions say that if the pod status is lost for some reason, then the component should be able to arrive at that at the pod status with looking at observations of the current state and not having to rely on this being persisted. That became the kind of the pain point with the previous. The scheduler would say, okay, the pod condition says, okay, this is requested, and the scheduler writes to the status saying approved. They did not want that. So instead, what we did is, okay, we'll keep all the desired and what scheduler approves in the spec, and spec is guaranteed, or at least the design intent is it should be persisted.
I see.
So that is the change.
I see. Okay, makes sense. And I think there is also a little bit of a security concern with scheduler updating anything other than the status. And this sub-resource, like binding sub-resource, addresses that problem as well. All right, sounds good. I will review this kept very soon. Hopefully I'll get a time to review it. And we are all going to KubeCon. Feel free to
I think I'll schedule something with of course, Carol suggested this. We should get together with our reviewers and approvers, and then face to face and have this. So next week, sometime, whichever is convenient, I'll go offline.
That would be great, actually. So we are going to have this contributor summit, and we are going to be there. Scheduler or SIG scheduling overall has a 3-hour time slot in the contributor summit.
Right.
It will be great to use some part of that for maybe peer-to-peer PR reviews. So basically, sort of like face-to-face PR reviews together. That will basically speed up things and remove some of the back and forth communication that we usually deal with. So we can use this opportunity for doing this. And this is not only for this particular CAP. I encourage everybody who has a PR that is not getting enough attention to be there and communicate directly with any of us to review these PRs over there. We are going to have this 3-hour time slot in the Contributor Summit. We're going to use part of that for also demoing some of the work that is going on in our incubators. And hopefully it'll be more like a social gathering for all the contributors as well. I look forward to seeing some of you folks there.
Yeah, definitely. I'll send an email to Carol and Beata, make sure that they're aware of this, and we're going to discuss this at the point. Okay. So
if for any reason some of you folks are not attending Contributor Summit, which is happening one day before the start of the conference, we can also, during the conference, we can also find an hour or so and sit together and review some of these PRs.
Okay, I'll start an email thread and find out what works best for everyone.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bobby.
Is there any other topic that anybody wants to talk about, or is there any question, comments, PRs waiting for review?
This is Mayank. I have a question regarding shadowing API reviews. Is there some criteria for that, or can I sign up somewhere?
Feel free to sign up. I don't know the details really, to be honest with you. I volunteered myself. Klaus and I volunteered ourselves for the API review and for at least for the SIG scheduling. I've actually gone through one of those like peer, sort of like face-to-face reviews with Jordan, and it was very helpful actually. It's going to take a while for someone to become like a competent API reviewer, because there are so many little things that you need to keep in mind when it comes to the API. It's not only about designing the API, it's also about a lot of small details in the code that you need to know about, and it's not necessarily like common sense or like.
Correct. No, I agree. I mean, because I contributed a feature,
Yeah.
and it was reviewed by Jordan only, so I got to learn some stuff there. So
Yeah.
where did you sign up? Like, do I just make a PR to one of the things where I just add my name, or?
Jordan actually sent out an email. I don't know where that email is sent to. I can probably find it. And he asked for volunteers.
No, I think so. I saw that email. He was basically asking the leads to suggest people. So that's why I was a little confused. So is it that you would have to probably recommend people, or is that based on certain criteria? That's what I was not clear about.
You know, I don't think this is like very, there is any formal process to volunteer someone. It's just, if you communicate with him directly, or if you don't want to do that, I can actually tell him that you are interested.
Sure. So why don't you recommend me for SIG scheduling?
Sure. Yeah, I can reply to that email thread and also add you as an API reviewer. I don't, honestly, I have gone through this process and read the documents and everything, but I still don't feel like I am there because this is still new to me, and then there's a lot of things that I need to learn. It's going to take a while. I'm sure it's not going to be like you sign up and within like on 3 days you become.
Yep, that's totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, absolutely, I'll recommend you, and then if anybody else is also interested, I'll be happy to do that for them as well.
Cool. And I think the second part was that deschedulers, event pod spreading. I think you had some concerns which are valid, but I feel like, we could mark that as experimental, and we could try to be as close as possible to the actual API that we are defining in pod.
Yeah,
and
both of these two are great things to do. I mean, marking it clearly as experimental will be great because Kubernetes is super popular. We sometimes go and add a new API somewhere, and despite the fact that we've marked it as alpha or experimental, people still take it and use it and rely on it. And then when it's changed, their systems may break. So it's important to communicate the changes clearly, make sure that it's marked as experimental, and also, the other thing is that try to make the changes as close as possible to the proposed API. Of course, the proposed API might change.
Mm-hmm.
It's not finalized, but at least hopefully the changes that you make are going to be very close to the final version of this.
Yeah, I think we will collaborate. So I'll make a PR. I'll collaborate with the I forget the name of the person who's doing event pod spreading, but I'll make it sure. Make sure that
it's close. Okay. Sure. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. Otherwise, that's fine. If you want to make that change, that's fine with me. All right. Thank you, Mayank. Is there any other question, comments? We have 3 more minutes left in the meeting. If there is no other question or comments, we can end the meeting, and you guys will get 3 minutes of your life back.
Nothing.
All
okay,
right.
see you at KubeCon.
Yeah. See you.
Okay. Bye. See you later.
Bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye.